drugs, guns, and money.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode. Nah, forget that. We're already 60 plus episodes into Conduct Detrimental. Am I going to keep doing this when we get into the 100s, 200s, 300s? Welcome to episode 1321. Okay, we're far enough along in the continuum I could dispense with that. So welcome to the Sports Law Podcast, Conduct Detrimental. I'm your co-host, Daniel Wallach, and with me, as always, is Sports Law Lust, Dan Lust, my co-host. Dan, how are you? How are you today?
We're just going to break tradition. We're going to break tradition. We're just not going to do it. You know what, Dan? Wild card. It's the Roger Maris episode. It's episode 61. How about that, Dan? How you like them apples?
That's an excellent one because I didn't have a New York Giant that necessarily fit into 61. Maybe it was Bart Oates. I can't remember. But eventually, as we get into triple figures, the uniform number isn't going to really work. And I think we're going to run out of really good topic or really good, analogies or reference points in sports. So let's just say Conduct Detrimental is the Sports Law Podcast, and we're back as always. So Dan, we're going to change things up this week. You and I are notorious for being generalists and specialists on so many different topics in a given week. But this week, we're going to train our focus on one case, one issue, and see if that might be a more interesting way to approach Conduct Detrimental, at least for 1 week. Would you like to clue our audience into what this week's topic is?
Dan, first of all, I don't like that you switch these things up on me. Okay, listen, this is not. Just kidding. Obviously, we planned this out. So, for those coming anew to Conduct Detrimental, we normally cover a handful of the biggest stories of the week. But this week, for better or for worse, we're blessed with really one story that I've been covering kind of behind the scenes, but now it's kind of in the spotlight this week. And otherwise, it's not a college football week. We just have one story. So without further ado,
thank God.
Well, let's not thank God. Some of us like college football over here.
Oh my God!
So yeah,
Big Ten, Big Ten, Big Ten. We're finally moving on.
So let's jump right into it. The story is near and dear to a lot of us. It's the we'll say the Vanessa Bryant, we'll say trilogy of lawsuits, trilogy of legal actions. Just a brief background. So not to bury the lead, we're going to talk about Vanessa Bryant's lawsuit against the LA County Sheriff's Office. A lawsuit filed in the last couple of days, depending on when you're listening to this. It's early in the week of September 21st. So yeah, we're going to get into that, but you really, to understand where that lawsuit comes from, you need a little bit of a background on the tragic passing of Kobe Bryant, the memorial, and the underlying wrongful death lawsuit, along with some federal legislation. So between Dan and myself, we're going to lay a little bit of foundation, and then in the last half of this podcast, last 2/3, however long it takes us to get through the background, we're just going to break down the legalese, as they say. So Dan, let me kick it to you to start. Just tell me, it can be legal, non-legal. What are your overall thoughts on, Kobe, Vanessa, Gianna, and where we all start?
Well, I mean, the emotions are still raw. The news is still relatively recent, and the optic of Vanessa Bryant suing anybody in Los Angeles County has to send a chill down any defendant's spine. I mean, how would you like to be the sheriff's office, one of the sheriff's deputies, or any defendant being on the other side of the V against Vanessa Bryant in a case that arises out of the tragic death of Kobe Bryant? So right away on a sort of gut level or just a high level impression that this is really difficult terrain for any defendant, because he was such a beloved and remains such a beloved figure, not only in the world of professional basketball, but especially in Los Angeles. So it does raise issues of, no matter what the merits of this case are, or what the merits of any of these cases, the defendants, whether it's the helicopter company, the pilot, the deceased pilot, or in this case, Los Angeles County or the sheriff's office, they're really facing a powerful adversary in terms of home court advantage. And the home court advantage doesn't lie with Los Angeles County or with the sheriff's office. The sympathies and the emotions lie with Vanessa Bryant, and that's going to loom over all of these cases.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess we'll just do a brief chronology just so people understand the time frame here. Kobe's passing, the helicopter crash, I remember, I've talked about this, but, the kind of watershed moment, where you were when it happened, January 26, 2020, right before this COVID madness kind of hit. It set the tone for, we'll say, what's been a somber and otherwise, I don't know, a strange 2020 to say the least. But I remember thinking it was fake, and then, sadly finding out it was real. Within a month of that loss, within the months of that incident, on February 24th, 2020, Vanessa Bryant files her wrongful death lawsuit. That was the same, well, I guess, February 24th. People will know that that was the date of the memorial, but the reason that was picked as the date of Kobe and Gianna's memorial, Gianna obviously being, Kobe's daughter. Kobe, we knew him as number 8 for a little bit, then we knew him as number 24, and Gianna's number for the Mamba Academy, the black jersey, was number 2. So 224 was very fittingly a day that made sense for this memorial. So on that day, a mega wrongful death complaint was filed. Dan, maybe you want to give a little bit of your impressions on the we'll say the content and what this complaint looked like as you went through it.
Well, I'm still reading it, Dan. The lawsuit was filed more than almost a half a year ago, and it's really daunting in its scope, length. I think it's 286 paragraphs, 28 separate causes of action. It's a 70-page complaint for basically a state court, state law, wrongful death action. And in my business, in my neck of the woods, when we've done civil defense work, whether or plaintiff side work in any kind of wrongful death scenario, most of the complaints in state court tend to be on the shorter side. In federal court, there's a heightened pleading allegation, and the complaint allegations tend to be much more comprehensive than they are in state court, where only a short and plain statement is really required. So what struck me about the lawsuit was just its scope, its depth, and it really does show or showcase what is likely to be an aggressive litigation strategy going forward. I mean, she's being represented by one of the biggest law firms in California, Munger, Tolles and Olson.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you look at the complaint, when you weigh the complaint and see who the attorneys are, it's like, wow, if you're the defense lawyer or the defendants in the case, you're up against a very formidable opponent that's not going to spare any expense and has the sympathies of Los Angeles County on her side.
Yeah, so I think, just to Dan's point, it is not, in addition to wrongful death complaints, I mean, I've defended my fair share of wrongful death lawsuits. They're, we'll say for better or for worse, attorneys will use the same, at least in New York, same general template. They'll change a couple things around. They want to make sure they hit, facial sufficiency, and they hit the right tones, the right tenors. But it's going to be the same, basically, cut and paste job. I don't mean to say anything bad about plaintiffs' lawyers, but there's no necessarily need to unveil and reveal your hand in a complaint. You do that later on, or the bill of particulars, or during depositions, but you don't do it during the complaint. Now, in the state of California, where the incident occurred, there's a 2-year statute of limitations on the filing of a case. So that means from the date of someone's passing, you have 2 years to file a lawsuit. So here, that would have put the statute of limitations firmly January 26th of 2022. So again, typically in these instances, you would wait. If you're the plaintiff, you would wait until, maybe a year and a half, a little bit closer to that deadline, because once you put a case into suit, the court has their own what's called standards and goals, which basically says, these courts are judged, and it's maybe, I'm not sure if this is news to everybody, but judges have a scorecard of how fast they're adjudicating cases. That's why if you go to court and the judge adjourns it, it might be nice that the judge adjourns it, he's going to postpone it, but the longer a case goes on and past a certain window, so judges, when a case is assigned, usually if it's either a complex case or a standard case, we'll say they'll get like 2.5 years from their bosses to get a case done. If it's a really complex case like this one probably is, maybe they'll get 3.5 years or something like that. Some number, 3, maybe, I don't want to say 3.5, but it starts the clock ticking, right? So there's no reason you want to start the clock ticking while these investigations are still going on, right? While they're investigating, the NTSB is investigating, or the FAA is investigating, or there's, they're looking for the black box and whatnot. So really atypical to file a lawsuit within a month of someone passing away. In addition, Dan, we're not even talking about it. there's got to be a natural grieving process that occurs. And to file a lawsuit within a month of losing your husband, the father of your children, I wouldn't have, Dan, I'm a betting man. I would not have bet on that. That is not something that I would have thought would have occurred here. So anyway, we point this out. Well, you guys turn in for the sports law analysis. We have a wrongful death complaint. Is it necessarily in the sports law intersection? Sure. I mean, maybe, but we have to understand how impressive it is that such a massive complaint is filed within 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, I want to build on that point by agreeing with you that just generally speaking, it does raise eyebrows that during what should be a normal grieving process, litigation is commenced. But these are not normal circumstances. And I think in Vanessa Bryant's case, there was a real advantage in filing the lawsuit sooner rather than later because, the news, this was a worldwide story. It received a tremendous amount of attention. There seems to be, at least in many people's minds, a clearly an indisputably damaged, plaintiff, and by most in most people's lenses, the perception that something went wrong here, that this wasn't, a normal accident or an act of God. Somebody was at fault, the helicopter pilot or the manufacturer of the helicopter or the owner of the helicopter. So there's a real tactical advantage, I think, in striking while the iron's hot. And let's make no mistake about the grieving process here. And this is not Vanessa Bryant burning the midnight oil, drafting a complaint when she should be grieving. The only effort it took on her part was to sign an engagement letter with a law firm, and the law firm did the rest of the work. So it doesn't exactly cause a distraction or interfere with the grieving process. And I think this was definitely the kind of case where you want to move quicker instead of laying back and waiting on the statute of limitations and filing it maybe a week before the statute of limitations runs out. I mean, justice delayed is justice denied, and there's a real advantage, as I've just said, in moving expeditiously on the heels of this, traumatic event, which is still fresh in everybody's minds.
Yeah, so let's we'll kind of go over the highlights, but I do want to make sure we get to the LA County Sheriff's case, because that's obviously the new news we have today. The lawsuit, importantly, is alleged against the helicopter pilot as well as the helicopter company. It does not include the manufacturers, and Kobe Bryant is not listed as a defendant, even though it sounds crazy. I have seen a case where a family member sues an operator of a car, even though husband sues wife just because one was driving. That's sometimes what you do with insurance policies, or a son sues a father if the father was driving. Doesn't matter if they lived or passed away. It's kind of an insurance technicality. But Kobe's was not named in the estate, in the case. Why would Kobe possibly be named? You've seen it online. I don't know if there's any necessarily truth to this, but there's allegations that Kobe, this is also obviously speculation. There's no black box in the plane, nothing like that was recovered. But that maybe Kobe was telling them to fly, and he was rushing them, and he's the organizer of the flight. So he maybe had a supervisory role when it came to this flight that maybe Kobe should have possibly said something. So I don't know if I buy that. But importantly, for legal purposes, when you're a plaintiff, right, and you're trying to get as much money as you can from a lawsuit, obviously Vanessa Bryant's not going to sue Kobe Bryant. That just doesn't make sense. But Vanessa Bryant sued first. The other family members have followed. If you were another family member and you're trying to make sure you have the most money, right? Some of these families, some of the passengers were husband and wife, right? So children are left parentless. It's tragic. As much as you don't want to sue Kobe Bryant, when he passed away, Forbes estimated his worth to be about $600 million. So not putting Kobe Bryant in the lawsuit when there's maybe even a scintilla of fault on his part, it's interesting, at least. But, no Kobe Bryant named. Kobe Bryant has not, you can always obviously amend the complaint to add Kobe if something came up. He has not been added to this point. So just a quick, actually, Dan, let me ask you, do you find it weird that Kobe was A, not included, and B, hasn't been amended or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, among other things, for the reasons you pointed out, but I'm also surprised by the lack of attention that's been placed on the other 7 victims. I mean, this is not a case only about, Kobe Bryant and Vanessa Bryant. There were seven other people who perished. So, there's only a finite amount of money to go around. I mean, no defendant is so deep pocketed that everyone is going to be receiving an 8-figure settlement here, and it really does place the plaintiffs almost at in conflict with one another, because they're not, while they have a unity of interest, at least in terms of the legal theories and claims, they're each separately suing, and the pocket of money that's available is limited. And Kobe Bryant's net worth is $600 million, and his loss of economic earning power is so great that you can make a really strong economic case for Vanessa Bryant's damages to be much greater than maybe even all of the other plaintiffs' decedents combined. It really does create an issue of fairness and equity, and it places the different plaintiffs potentially in conflict with one another, or at least in conflict with Vanessa Bryant.
Yeah, so what I've heard from my various channels, and don't quote me on this, it's nothing confirmed, but that the insurance policy that was applied to this helicopter was in the ballpark of, we'll say, 25 million. We'll say right around there. That normally would be sufficient for anybody flying private, right? Dan, God forbid I got in a plane, an air helicopter, and I passed away. My wrongful death case is not going to be worth $20 million, even though I might think the world of my potential earnings in this possible world. Then maybe someday I'll strike it rich. But 25 million is usually enough to cover someone's life. As insane as that sounds, that's just the way cases work out in this country. If there's no pain and suffering, if you pass away instantaneously, that's the type of valuation on someone's case. It's going to be in below 7 figures. So as crazy as it sounds, 25 million is usually enough to cover it. Now here, Dan, Vanessa Bryant's lawsuit is seeking hundreds of millions of dollars. That was the quote. We'll see how much they're actually going to get. But that, Dan, to answer your question, why are Vanessa's relatives, be it Kobe and Johnny, getting more attention than the rest of the surviving? Because those two alone, right, or maybe if you just say Kobe alone, they have enough to bankrupt all of the companies involved. So I think I understand why they're getting more attention.
Well, it's in a sense, sort of a rising tide lifts all boats, and the equities and the sympathies in the case in favor of Kobe and Vanessa, could redound to the benefit of all the other plaintiffs. I mean, this is a case that's not going to be dismissed on a motion for summary judgment, and there would seem to be a real public relations motivation, at least on the part of the defendants or their insurers, to try to settle this case
Good luck.
much more expeditiously than in the normal course. But when you're looking at a $25 million policy and nine victims, one of whom is Kobe Bryant, I mean, how do you sort of allocate or apportion all that? And Dan, I want to get back to your earlier point. I wouldn't sell myself so short. $25 million may not be enough for someone of your youth and future earning potential, particularly if we are ever able to take conduct detrimental to a higher level and maybe monetize this someday. But $25 million is not a lot in a multi-defendant case. So how do you settle all those claims?
Right, and also, this is important. There maybe is an issue of insufficiency of funds, because Kendall Jenner, I know, was flying those reports that she was flying on that same airline, and Kawhi Leonard. So obviously neither, maybe Kendall Jenner is probably Kobe Bryant wealthy, but yeah, so that's definitely an issue. So, that being said, the other defendant that's not included, which also might be included later down the line, the helicopter manufacturer, the distributor, there might have been issues in the helicopter. So I'm going to fast forward.
But the story keeps changing. I mean, I think the theory of the case is that the helicopter pilot made a decision to fly into a fog. I mean, could it be both the fog, the decision-making of the pilot, and the manufacturing defects associated with the helicopter? I mean, it can't be any and all of those things. It has to be one of them. And, in the absence of, I guess, a national, transportation safety administration, board, report, right now we're dealing in an information vacuum in terms of assessing fault. But I think that might be one of the reasons why the manufacturer of the plane hasn't yet been sued or named as a defendant, because I think the theory is, isn't it helicopter pilot error, pilot negligence?
I mean, there's a couple theories, but just so for those that are kind of new to this, as a plaintiff, I mean, I've never practiced as a plaintiff's attorney, but I've done enough defense work. The goal is to throw a lot of things at the wall and see what sticks after you run through discovery. So, I know because this is probably a good segue here. So, number one, you could claim that it's pilot error. You could claim there was an issue with the weather system and flying into weather. So, a part of this lawsuit is that the terrain awareness weather system, or whatever you want to phrase, I've heard it, used in a couple different contexts. That this helicopter was not, it was not mandatory to have this equipment on the helicopter. I believe the helicopter is an early 1990s model. There was no recall, right? Sometimes we get on our cars, I have a Jeep, we got recalled. I had to go, fix something on it. The brakes had to be fixed. No recall on these helicopters, no black box. So we don't really know what happened on this helicopter. So, not so long ago at this point, June 18th, I apologize. Vanessa Bryant is introducing legislation to hopefully be passed, and she's introducing a bill called the Kobe and Gianna Bryant Helicopter Safety Act. So people can say, again, just you got to take my word for it. There were people in my replies saying Vanessa Bryant's just chasing money. It's all about the money for her. If it wasn't about the money, she wouldn't have sued. She wouldn't deal with this. But if you're going as far as the proposed federal legislation, I'm going to say it's not. I'm going to say it's not about the money. You're really trying to enact change and trying to make helicopters safety. I mean, in a much safer place. Obviously, Dan, in a world that we were in January and February of 2020, we were worried about helicopters being safe. It's a very different world than we're in now with this COVID 2020. But it is what it is. But I think it's pretty safe to say that Vanessa is doing this to try to enact a bigger code. So Dan, now I kind of want to make our transition to our topic where we're at. So what we've seen in these last, it's probably like 9 months at this point, right about 8 months. Vanessa Bryant has sued and said, I'm suing for hundreds of millions of dollars. And, I'm seeing people on Twitter, I don't mean to make light of it, but get it, they're saying, get her queen, go after him and go get him into bankruptcy. And she follows something like that up with, this lawsuit that we're going to talk about, suing the LA County Sheriff's Office for disseminating pictures of and taking illegal, impermissible pictures of Kobe Bryant and the other remains of victims at the site. She's suing them. And then, there's a story that comes out, and it's not really necessarily tied into all this, but, I want to bring it up because as an LA County juror, you just kind of have to be mindful of the whole story of Vanessa Bryant. There's a story that's coming out today, or it's probably, within the past 48 hours. Vanessa Bryant has allegedly, we'll use the term allegedly because we don't know for sure, but thrown her mother out of the house and asked for a car back that she gave her. And now they're kind of having a split, and Vanessa has this big statement that she says, I don't want my public, my personal dealings aired. I want it to stop here. So, Dan, I'm going to phrase it to you like this, because I think this is kind of an interesting, just legal time. I didn't really know that much about Vanessa Bryant prior to any of this. And now obviously she's the center of this whole ordeal in a positive way. She's trying to enact positive change. But, when you're in the spotlight comes maybe some additional criticism. So Dan, we'll try this out. I know you're a man of New York and now from Florida. Let's pretend you were a, Beverly Hills Dan. How do you think your perception of Vanessa Bryant has changed? Do you think that you're capable, if I'm, doing some voir dire, do you think you're capable of being an impartial juror?
Yeah, sure. And I think I'd rather be, given my background in, growing up in New York City, I think I'd rather be Manhattan Beach Dan, if we're going to, pick a California.
That was not part of the hypothetical. You're Beverly Hills Dan.
Vanessa Bryant's, behavior is not even remotely an issue in any of these cases. She's suing in a representative capacity as a, the administratrix or administrator of the estate, as his wife. Her actions and her reputation and whatever her her relationship is with her mother and any perceptions, none of that is even remotely relevant. I don't believe it would come up or be remotely discoverable material or admissible at trial. So for people like you and me who see all this litigation conduct, it does kind of it does create an image in my mind of someone who unhesitatingly uses the court system swiftly, quickly, and aggressively. But for the average LA juror, I think the uh, the fondness and love of Kobe Bryant will overshadow and overwhelm any potential downside associated with maybe the perception that Vanessa, Bryant has a tumultuous relationship with her mother. I think that's neither here nor there, and it's classic TMZ, New York Post, grist of the mill, and it has absolutely no relevance or real world impact on how these cases play out.
Yeah, so I bring it up for an important reason, and then we're gonna head over to the new topic. The Kobe wrongful death case has really not really gone that far. No depositions, anything like that. But what has happened, which at least is of note, there was a motion to transfer venue filed by the pilot's estate. Obviously, he passed away, but to move the case out of LA County jury because the allegation was, of all places on the face of this earth, that LA County, of all places, was going to be the least partial. They were going to be unfair towards and favor Vanessa Bryant. So, in theory, right, as a jury, you can write a blank check for whatever recovery you want. So that was the thought process. And they filed a motion to change venue. Vanessa Bryant filed what's called legal opposition. And she basically said, Kobe is so big that there is no place, it doesn't matter. He's an icon, international icon, citing different statues being built of him in, across the country, from China to Italy, all over the world, that you need to actually, if you're going to just strip that down about favoritism and who's going to be biased and whatnot, that LA County, Los Angeles County makes the most sense because that's where we live. That's where we grew up. That's where, and in the law, something called form non-convenes. You got to pick the venue that makes the most sense for the action. And, for better or for worse, LA County is the one that makes the most sense. So I understood the defendant's argument there. It's a very similar one that was made in the Boston bombing case not so long ago, and that was taken up on appeal because the case was actually kept in Boston, which you would think maybe that's the only place it shouldn't be. Same type of argument, but the case was kept in Boston and the case was kept in LA. So Dan, let's put a pin in that.
I want to just get back and focus on the motion for change of venue. Those are rarely granted, and I think this one in particular, I don't know if it's been ruled on yet, but from my lens, it has a 0%, and zero is not a number, but it has a 0% chance of getting granted.
You hear about? I told you it has been ruled upon and it was denied.
Okay, good. And then, I'm so good at my predictions. I don't even know the result. I don't know the outcome, and then and my predictions after the fact still ring true. But these
Dan, just like Kevin Warren, I don't believe you, but go on.
But the motions for transfers of venue really are more appropriate in a criminal setting than they are in a civil or commercial litigation. I mean, I can't think of any case civilly where I've seen a motion like that requested or granted. And this, obviously is a whole high profile case, but in the internet age, the publicity surrounding this accident and the death and the love for Kobe Bryant transcends Los Angeles County. It's not, the locus of it isn't just LA County. I think it's throughout California and probably, nationally. So there's no escaping the publicity surrounding this lawsuit. And as a civil case, it really had no shot of being granted.
So, okay, so let's take this moment, for purpose of people, that's our background section. So now you know as much as you need to know about.
That's a background? Kobe. That's a whole episode, Dan.
Dan, guess what? We're not done yet, okay? We didn't get to the heavy-hitting legal analysis people signed up for.
That's like, I love the throat clearing for half an hour, and then we really get into the meat of it.
That was not throat clearing. That was just, Dan, I write my own briefs. I write my summary judge motions. I have the deposition testimony I throw in the facts presented. We got to lay a foundation. Okay.
Well, so we're burying the lead because I think
we're not burying the lead. This is the Vanessa Bryant episode. We gotta lay a proper foundation. Okay. So now let's put a marker right here. Boom.